welcome to the Jayda InStitches show. Happy November! So that means it's time for the next installment in the 2017 calendar blanket series. And this month we are really excited to bring you an owl square. We've had a lot of requests to make an owl square here on the show, and an owl is a real fall animal to me. Not just early fall either, late fall. The kind of fall that is rapidly descending into winter. And up here in Canada, that's definitely what November means. But not all of us experience November the same way. So we've got two different color palettes to inspire your November square this month. For those of you who are down south and still in the middle of your warm autumn, even looking forward to American Thanksgiving, we have a rich, warm palette. This little owl is in shades of brown and tan and cream on a bright orange background. These are really warm autumn colors. But for those of us who are a little further north and possibly already experiencing some winter, we've got a cooler autumn palette. This is shades of gray and cream for the owl on a subtler mustard colored background. But since owls come in all different hues and shades, and so do the trees that they sit in, we're going to leave the color choices ultimately up to you. Whatever says November is the right choice. That said, you want to make sure that you use the same kind of yarn that you've used for the rest of your calendar blanket squares, the same hook size, and the same border color too. This pattern, and all of the other calendar blanket square patterns that we have done, also exist in written form in our Etsy shop. And if you pop over to our Etsy shop, the link will be in the description box down below, and do some shopping. Every time you purchase a pattern, you are directly supporting us here at the Jayda InStitches show, and we really appreciate it. That said, let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, head on over to the craft table, and we will stitch up a November square together. The tools required for our owl square are a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and we're using a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook or an I9. As far as yarn's concerned, you want to make sure you're using the same yarn you've been using for the rest of your squares. For me, that is medium worsted weight yarn size 4 in acrylic. You're going to want 15 grams of your main dark owl color. I used brown in this particular square. I'm using dark gray today. 15 grams of your background color. I used orange in this square, and I'm using a mustard color today. You want 10 grams of your border color, and if you're using white like me, you need a little extra for his eyes. You need about 10 grams of the lighter color for his accents, his wings, and his main belly. And you need a scrap amount of black, yellow for his beak, and a little extra color. I used cream here, but you can use whatever you want for his little belly center. So once you've got all of that together, we can get started. All right, for everyone who has been making these squares along with me, the first 6 rows are nice and simple and very familiar. We're going to begin with a cinch circle. We're using our dark owl color. For me, that's gray. We're going to make a cinch circle and chain 3 to begin. This chain 3 for row 1 counts as a double crochet. Into the rest of your cinch circle, you're going to work 11 more double crochets. Once you've worked 11 double crochets into your cinch circle, including your chain 3, that's 12 stitches, cinch it shut. We're going to join to the top of our chain 3 with a slip stitch to join, and that is row 1. So row 1 included the chain 3 as a stitch. For rows 2 through 6, we are not including the chain 3 as a double crochet stitch. We are going to skip over it. But we do start with a chain 3. We're going to double crochet into the same stitch that we chained 3 out of. So if we pull up on it, you can see that little space right there. For now, that counts as 2. You're going to work 2 double crochet into every single stitch all the way around, and I'll catch up with you at the end. And if you're new, I'll show you our little cheat method. You'll have 24 stitches including the chain 3 when you get all the way around, but we don't want to use that chain 3 and we don't want a gap. So we're going to work a double crochet into what we call the false stitch, or that little stitch that the chain 3 appears to be coming out of. So work a double crochet into that, skip over top of the chain 3, find the first real double crochet you made, and join with a slip stitch to that. So now you still have a 24 stitch count for the end of row 2. You do not have a gap. We are not including that chain 3 as a stitch. Row 3, chain 3 to begin. Double crochet into the very same place that you chained 3 out of. It's also the stitch that is often called the joining stitch. Double crochet into the next stitch, and the repeater pattern is 2 double crochet into the next stitch, double crochet into the next stitch. So 2, 1, 2, 1, all the way around. Use that little cheat method at the end. Skip over your chain 3. You'll have 36 stitches at the end of row 3. At the end of row 3, add your little extra double crochet into that false stitch. Skip over the chain 3 and join with a slip stitch to the top of the first real double crochet. That's 36 stitches for row 3. Row 4, chain 3 to begin. Double crochet into the same stitch as joining, or that the chain 3 seems to be sitting in. Double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And for row 4, the repeat pattern is 2 double crochet into the next stitch, double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Repeat that all the way around. Don't forget the little cheat, and you'll have 48 stitches in total at the end of row 4. At the end of row 4, double crochet into the false stitch, skip over the chain 3, join with a slip stitch to the top of the first real double crochet. That's 48 stitches at the end of row 4. Row 5, chain 3 to begin, double crochet into the same stitch as joining, double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches, and that's the pattern. 2 double crochet into the next stitch, double crochet into each of the next 3. So 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, all the way around. At the end of row 5, do the little cheat, and you'll have 60 stitches in total. At the end of row 5, work that little cheat, skip over your chain 3, join with a slip stitch to the top of the first real double crochet, and that is 60 stitches. We are going to do one more row in the dark owl color. So this is row 6. We begin with a chain 3, double crochet into the same stitch that we joined in, and you're going to double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. So you should see the little pattern forming here. So the repeat pattern is 2 double crochet into the first stitch of the set, followed by a double crochet into each of the next 4. 2 double crochet into the next stitch, double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. So 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, all the way around, and at the end of row 6, do your little cheat, skip over your chain 3, join with a slip stitch to the top of the first double crochet, and you will have 72 stitches, and that's it for the dark gray color. At the end of row 6, you'll have 72 stitches all the way around. Don't forget to do the little cheat. Join with a slip stitch to the top of the first real double crochet, and you can fasten off that color. So snip your yarn, pull that yarn back through the loop on your hook, and you can weave it in or work over top of it. Now you want to grab your background color. We're going to start with a slip knot. Pick up your big circle. Find where you fastened off, so there's a little knot there. You're going to join your yarn in the stitch just to the left of that fastened off knot. We're going to join with a slip stitch. Make sure it's a nice loose slip stitch because this is our squaring up row. We're going to join with a slip stitch. This counts as a slip stitch, and we're working directly into the next stitch. And here we go. Single crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, half double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, treble crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Remember, that's 2 wraps around your hook to begin with. Chain 2, this becomes a corner space, and then we repeat it in reverse. Treble crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, half double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and then we're going to slip stitch across the next 2. Keep them loose because you want to be able to use them later, nice and loose. And then the whole thing repeats again. 2 single crochet, 2 half double crochet, 2 double crochet, 2 treble crochet, a chain 2, and then the whole thing is worked in reverse. 2 treble crochet, 2 double crochet, 2 half double crochet, etc. You want to repeat that whole thing all the way around until you get back to the beginning, and I'll show you what that looks like there. So once you've worked that pattern of, let's start here in the corner, so your chain 2, treble, treble, double, double, half, half, single, single, slip, slip, single, single, half, half, double, double, treble, treble, chain 2, so on and so on. You get all the way back around to the beginning, and after you've worked your last 2 single crochets, you're going to be confronted with something that looks like this. So here is our little fastened off knot, and it is fastened off into a stitch. So what you've got here are the options of a false stitch here and a part of a stitch here. It looks complicated, right? We want to skip over the knot and slip stitch into the false stitch, or what we fastened off into in the previous row. So skip over. You know that this is the only stitch you have left. You want to close in that gap, and then once you're back, you just slip stitch to that slip stitch that you started the row with. And there you go. You should have 72 main stitches and 4 chain 2 corners all the way around, and something that looks like this. Rows 8 and 9 are easy. We chain 3 to begin, and we want to double crochet in every single stitch all the way around. At the end of row 8, you're going to have 88 double crochets, and that's because when we get to a chain 2 corner, we have to do a little corner action. And once I get there, I'll show you what it looks like. So we're double crocheting in every single stitch. When you get to a chain 2 corner, you're going to work 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 2 more double crochet into that same chain 2 space. Don't forget, when you're coming out of the space, to pull back, you want to expose the top of that stitch and make sure you double crochet into it. You don't want to miss it because that will throw off your stitch count. You want to have 88 double crochets at the end of row 8, and that includes 4 chain 2 spaces. So 88 double crochets, 4 chain 2 spaces. When you get back to the beginning, you can join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. So we're back to including the chain 3 as a stitch in this row, but I'll catch up with you there. When you get back around to the beginning of row 8, you should have 88 double crochets, including your chain 3 and 4 chain 2 spaces. The other way of looking at that is you should count 22 double crochets across each side. So if you're trying to make sure that you've got the right number to finish off your last row, you should count, make sure you have 22, including your chain 3. You're going to join to the top of your chain 3 with a slip stitch. Because we've changed up the method of our stitchery, we won't have a gap. Row 9 is an exact repeat of row 8. Chain 3, double crochet into every single stitch around, work 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet in every single corner, And at the end of row 9, you'll have 104 double crochets and 4 chain 2 spaces. And I'll catch up with you there. At the end of row 9, work your last double crochet, and if it helps to count, you should have 26 double crochets across each row. That includes your chain 3 and 4 chain 2 spaces. That's a total of 104 double crochets. We join with a slip stitch to the top of our chain 3, and that completes row 9. You can snip your yarn, fasten off your background color. That's it for the background color. You can grab your border color now, and we're going to just finish off the basic build of our square. Grab your border color, make a slip knot. You're going to join this in any chain 2 corner on your square with a slip stitch. Chain 3 to begin. We are doing a standard granny shell border. So that chain 3 counts as a double crochet. You're going to work 2 more double crochet into that same space, and including your chain 3, that is 1 shell. So 1 shell equals 3 double crochet, chain 2 for a corner, work 1 more shell into the same chain 2 space, so that's 3 double crochet, and you can work over your short tails or wait and weave them in later. It's entirely up to you. Chain 1 when you leave a corner, that's your little mini spacer. Skip 3 stitches, find the 4th, and work a shell into it. 3 double crochet. You're going to skip 3 stitches and work 3 double crochet or a shell into every 4th stitch across the row. Make sure that you chain 1 in between each shell. Skip 3 stitches, find the 4th, work a 3 double crochet, shell into it. Chain 1, skip 3 stitches, and continue. I'll catch up with you at the next corner, and then I'll let you go. Each side will have 6 individual shells running across it. They'll all be separated by chain 1s. When you get to the end of a side, you'll have 2 stitches left to skip. Make sure you chain 1 and work a corner, which is shell, chain 2, shell. So 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochet, all worked into the same space. Chain 1 to leave the corner, and then start that single shell pattern across the side all over again. At the end, you'll have shell, chain 2 shell in every corner, and 6 single shells across every side, all of which are separated by a chain 1. And I'll catch back up with you at the beginning. At the end of row 10, your border row, you'll have 6 single shells across each side, all separated by a chain 1, and a shell, chain 2 shell, chain 1 in every single corner. Back at the beginning, find the top of your chain 3 that you began with. Don't forget that last chain 1, and you can slip stitch to join. Snip your yarn, fasten off. That is it for the basic build of the square. Now we can start on all of his little pieces, and we're going to begin with his ears. So grab your main dark owl color, and we'll get right into that. We're going to begin with his little ears. This is the first accent piece we're going to make, so you want your main owl color. For me, that's dark gray. We're going to make 2 of these, and this is what the final finished piece looks like. Very, very basic. Fun little workout of your stitch repertoire. We're going to begin with a slip knot and chain 7. Once you have 7 chains, you're going to skip over the first, find the second chain from the hook, and slip stitch into it. Single crochet into the next chain, half double crochet into the next chain, double crochet into the next chain, treble crochet, that's 2 wraps around the hook to start, into the next chain, and into the last chain we're going to double treble, which is 3 wraps around the hook to begin. Pick up that loop in the final chain. You should have 5 loops on your hook. Wrap and pull back through sets of 2 And that is it. Leave yourself at least 30 centimeters or 12 inches, a little bit more if you require lots of extra yarn for sewing, because that's how we're going to attach our little appliques. Fasten off, grab your yarn needle, flip it over, and you can weave in your short tail across the backs of some of those stitches. And then we will move on to the next piece. Next we're going to make his beak. So grab some nice yellow or bright orange, whatever beak color you want. We're going to make a slip stitch, and this is going to look rather similar to the ear pattern. We're going to chain 5 to begin. Skip the first chain from the hook, find the second one, and slip stitch into it. Single crochet into the next chain, half double crochet into the next chain, and double crochet into the last chain. Same thing. Leave yourself at least 30 centimeters or 12 inches of yarn. This is for sewing. Fasten off, grab your yarn needle, and weave that short tail in across the back of some of those stitches. And that's the beak made. Next, we're going to make his eyes. We're using 2 colors, so black for the center and white, or your choice of bright color for the outside. We're going to begin with the center, so grab your black or dark color. I know this is a little tricky to see, but this is a pretty basic little shape we're going to make. We're going to start with a cinch circle and chain 2 to begin. This chain 2 does not count as a half double crochet. We just want to get to the right height. You're going to work 6 half double crochets into your cinch circle. Once you've worked 6 half double crochets into your cinch circle, cinch it shut, skip over your chain 2, find the first real half double crochet you made, and join with a slip stitch. So you should have a nice little circle. You can trim your yarn, you don't need much tail, you just want to fasten off and take a moment to weave in your 2 little tails across the back with your yarn needle. You should have 6 stitches all the way around the outside of your little circle, plus a little space where you knotted off. We're actually going to use that space. So 6 stitches plus a little knotted off space. And I'll show you what that looks like. Grab your eye color. For me, that's white. We're going to start with a slip knot. You can join your yarn in the stitch next to where you knotted off your previous color. I know that's a bit tricky to see, but you can probably see it on your own. Join with a slip stitch. You're going to chain 3. This chain 3 will count as a double crochet. Double crochet into the same stitch that you joined your nice eye color in. And you're going to work 2 double crochet into every single stitch all the way around, and when you get back to the beginning where that little knot is, it's a bit of a gap, you're going to work 2 double crochet into that space too. And we're going to have 14 double crochets, including our chain 3, at the end of this row. So after you've worked 2 double crochet into every one of those stitches, you should be looking at something that looks like this. So there's where you knotted off your dark color or your center color. You're going to find that little space and work 2 double crochets into that. This might also be the false stitch. It's a little confusing when we're working in something this small, so that's why I say just look for that knot and use the stitch that it's built into. What you want to do is fill in an even circle all the way around. You're going to join with a slip stitch, I should say, to the top of that chain 3, and you'll have 14 double crochets, including the chain 3, all the way around. Most importantly, it should look like this. We're not done though yet. We're going to chain 1. We're going to work 2 single crochets into the same little stitch that our chain 1 is coming out of, where we joined our yarn. We're going to work a single crochet into the next stitch, and we're going to repeat this little pattern all the way around. 2 single crochet into the next stitch, single crochet once into the stitch after that. So 2, 1, 2, 1, all the way around. You'll have 21 single crochets at the end of this row, and I'll catch up with you there. Back at the beginning, you're going to see your little false stitch. You're going to skip that because we actually have 2 real single crochet in the first spot. So skip over your false stitch, find the first real single crochet that we made, join with a slip stitch to it. You should have something that looks like a nice round eye. You're going to leave yourself at least 15, maybe even 16 inches of tail. That's around 35 or 37 centimeters. And fasten off. You want to make 2 of these, and then we'll move on to the next piece. All right, we've made his ears, we've made his eyes, and we've made his beak. The last things we want to make are his 2 wings and his little belly. So we're going to start with the wings. You want to grab your lighter color, your lighter owl color. So if you're using brown, you want a lighter brown. If you're using gray like me, you want a lighter gray. We're going to make 2 of these shapes for his wings. Grab your lighter owl color. Make a slip knot and chain 11. So 11 chains. Once you've chained 11, skip over the first chain from the hook, find the second, and slip stitch into it. Single crochet into the next stitch. Half double crochet into the next stitch. Double crochet into the next stitch, treble crochet into the next 2 stitches, and when I say stitch, I also mean chain. Chains are stitches too. And now we're going to reverse it. Double crochet into the next stitch, more chain, half double crochet into the next, single crochet into the next, and slip stitch into the last chain, chain 1. We are now going to work up the underside of our foundation chain row. So you're going to slip stitch back into the same place where you just slip stitched. And now we work the same pattern. We're going to single crochet into the next stitch, half double crochet into the next stitch, double crochet, treble treble, double, half, single, slip. I will catch up with you at the end. After your single crochet, you're going to slip stitch into the top or the last chain that's left, and then you're going to leave yourself a nice long tail around 15 inches or 35 centimeters and fasten off. You want 2 of these, and at the end you should have 2 shapes that look like this, kind of like a leaf. So make 2 of those in your light owl color. The last thing we want to do is make his sweet little belly. So you can use any color for the center that you like. Maybe you want to pull in a more autumny looking color, maybe you've got a favorite color, or a color you've used elsewhere in the calendar blanket that you want to sort of punch out in the autumn square. It's up to you. I've used just sort of a soft creamy white for his center, and I'm going to use the same color for my gray owl. So grab the center belly color that you're going to use. You do not need very much of it. We're going to begin with a cinch circle, and just like the very beginning of our square, we're going to chain 3 to begin. This chain 3 does count as a double crochet, and now you're going to work 11 double crochets into that cinch circle. Once you've worked 11 double crochets into your cinch circle, including your chain 3, that's 12, cinch it up nice and tight. Join with a slip stitch to the top of your chain 3, and you can snip your yarn and fasten off. You do not need any tail. You're going to fasten off and weave in both of these little short ends to get them out of your way. And then we're going to add the rest of our belly color. The center of your belly should look something like this. You should have 12 stitches all the way around. And now we're going to join the rest of our belly color. So for me, that's the light gray again. So you want your light owl color. Put a slip knot on your hook. You're going to find that little bit where you knotted off, and then you're going to join your yarn with a slip stitch into the stitch right next to it. Chain 3 to begin. double crochet into the same stitch. This double crochet, I should say this chain 3 is not going to count. We are going to use our little false stitch. So the chain 3 won't count at the end of this row, but we're going to count it for now just so that you kind of know where you're at. You're going to work 2 double crochets into each of the next 5 stitches. So far you should have something that looks like this. Chain 3 where we began with a double crochet right in the same place. 2 double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches, so altogether you should have what looks like 12 double crochets, and we're going to switch down to half double crochet. So you're going to work 2 half double crochet into each of the next 6 stitches. So 2 half double crochet in each of the next 6 stitches. So that's 2 half double crochet in each of the next 6 stitches. That should bring you back to the beginning. You should be looking at something that looks like this. There's the chain 3 we began with. There's my last 2 half double crochets. Here's the little knot, and this is the little space or the stitch that we knotted off in. We're going to use it. We're going to work a double crochet into it. So just put your hook underneath that. Work 1 double crochet. We're going to jump over top of our chain 3 and join with a slip stitch to the first real double crochet. We're doing that because we're working in the circle and we want a nice, tight, even color. We don't want any gaps. So they still should have 24 stitches in total because we're not counting the chain 3. We're not done yet, and we're not changing color. So we're going to chain 1. The chain 1 doesn't really matter. It doesn't count because we're going to work half double crochets all the way around. We're going to work 2 half double crochet into the same stitch as joining. So we slip stitched into the stitch, chained 1, we're going to work 2 half double crochets into it. And then a nice even little count all the way around, half double crochet once into the next stitch. And then repeat, 2 half double crochet into the next stitch, half double crochet into the stitch after that. Repeat that little 2 1 2 1 all the way around, and you'll have 36 half double crochets at the end of row 3. At the end of row 3 of our little belly, it's all half double crochets. Your last half double crochet will be right before the false stitch. You can skip over the false stitch since we started with 2 real half double crochets and join with a slip stitch to the first real half double crochet you made, and you shouldn't have any gaps there. Leave yourself at least 24 inches or 60 centimeters of yarn, even more so if you need a lot when you sew, because we're going to use that to sew our belly piece down. Alright, that is the ears, the eyes, the beak, the wings, and the belly. We are now able to put everything onto our square and sew it down. Alright, here we go. This is my favorite part. It's the assembly. You're going to lay down all of your pieces the way I have here. So your belly goes in the very bottom center of your owl. The bottom of it should just sort of sit across the top of that row 6 or the bottom of row 6, leaving most of row 6 of our owl showing. And it should sit right in the middle. The little wings can sit on either side. The curvature of the outside of the wing should neatly fit the curvature of our chubby little round owl. Both of them can sit there. The ears are going to sit up on the corner so that they cover off that first sort of hole, and the corner of the peak of the ear just touches the open corner of row 8. So a good chunk of your treble crochet, or your double treble crochet I should say, is going to sit on the actual final row of your owl. So it's going to overlap with your owl. And you can bend the little ear points to give them a little character. The eyes are going to sit in the top middle part of the body, and they're going to touch. And most importantly, our little beak is going to be in between the eyes, and it's going to actually come down over top of our belly. And I'll show you what it looks like on the finished. So obviously you want to make sure your belly goes down before your beak does. So there's an actual order in which we're going to sew down all of our parts. Once you have everything laid out, you can either pin it into place if that makes you more comfortable, or if you're comfortable with the idea of just adding pieces in as you go, then you can just take everything off and start sewing piece by piece. We're going to begin by sewing down the belly. We sew the belly on first, then the wings, then the ears, then the beak, and then the eyes. So the eyes go on last. So first, let's deal with the belly. I'm going to get all these other little pieces out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. Most importantly, you'll notice that my tail is coming to the left. So what that does is put that little half row, remember in row 2 we did double crochets and half double crochets? Your half double crochet is, you want those sort of facing upwards because that gives us just a little bit of an off oblong circle. We want to make his belly a little more kind of a pear-shaped almost? I don't know what you'd call that. But you want the chubbier part of your circle to be down at the bottom of your owl, and the smaller part, and you won't see much of a difference, but there is a little bit, that part faces up. So most importantly, your tail starts to the left. Put it in place so that most of your row 6 is showing. Thread up your long tail with your yarn needle. If you pin it into place, that's great. If you're comfortable holding it down like I do, that's cool too. And we're going to use that nifty little applique sewing trick where you pick up a piece of the top facing loop of a stitch on the square and then all the way through the corresponding stitch of the applique. You pick up the next top facing loop of the square, all of the stitch along the side of the applique, and so on. The next top facing loop that's closest to where your stitch is, and the stitch on the applique. Every so often, especially if you don't pin, lay it down, make sure it's not moving around on you, and then go at it again. By picking up those top facing loops, nothing shows through to the back. And I'll show you that on the finished piece. So there's all those appliques sewn down and not a single thing shows through to the back. Nice and neat. So go ahead, sew down your belly, and then we'll work on the wings and so on. Once you're finished sewing down your little applique piece, you can create a simple knot at the corner. Make it nice and tight. It won't show. And then you can weave your tail back and forth across the top of some of your stitches with the matching color, obviously. Back and forth a few times, and you can trim any excess. If you're using slippery yarn, you want to do it at least 3 times because you don't want anything unraveling on you. And that's how we sew down every single piece of our little applique collection here. The next pieces we're sewing down are our wings, so you want to put them in place. They should sit right in the middle on both sides, just a little bit lower than middle. You can also put them equally in the middle, but I like them just a little bit lower. They want to sit with their fattest part kind of even with the top of your belly. So it should look something like that. Pin them down if you have to, grab your yarn needle and start sewing them into place. You'll notice that I sewed my wings down so that the outside edge moves with the curve of the circle of my owl. And then the inside edge just is wherever it happens to fall. So that's what creates sort of this tubby little tucked in wing look. So that's the wings down. The next thing you want to do are put down his ears. And those are those longish triangular things that we made using the same color as our main owl. You want to place them so that the main double treble crochet across the bottom sits sort of inside the actual last row of your owl. And the point of your little tip sits just at the corner, that second corner space. You're covering up the big corner space, and it's going to meet up with that other corner space. So you can fiddle them around get them to a place that you like. They don't even have to be going in the same directions. After all, little owls tend to move their ears and their heads around a lot. Just put them where you want them, pin them down, and sew them into place using the exact same method that you did for everything else. After you've got your ears down, up here, we want to add on the beak. And the beak sits so that some of it overlaps the belly. We're going to put the eyes on last because the eyes are also going to overlap a bit at the top of the beak. So what you want to do is grab your beak, find the middle of your owl face, and overlap 2 or 3 stitches onto the middle top of your belly. As long as your beak looks like it's in the very middle of your owl and it overlaps the top of your belly, that's perfectly fine, and you can start sewing it down. Use the same technique, only this time when you get over top of the belly, you're going to be using some of the belly stitches. So you'll use little tops of the pieces of the stitches of the belly piece as opposed to going through to the bottom of the square, and you're still not going to see anything showing through. So go ahead and sew down the beak. Once you have your beak sewn down, you can add the last 2 appliques, and those are the eyes. You can place them on your owl. You want to roll them together so that they sit in the middle of the face of your owl and they kind of touch in the center. They should overlap the little top of your beak, and most of your beak should be showing down over top of the belly. So you can pin them into place or hold them down like I do. Start sewing down your eyes, and then you are finished your owl square. Once you've got your eyes sewn into place, and they should overlap the top corners of your beak a little bit, you are finished! 1 owl square. And there you go, the November owl square in warm or cool shades or whatever colors your heart desires. I hope you had fun making this along with me this week, and if you are still catching up and need the links to the other calendar blanket squares, you'll find them all, including how to join, in the description box down below. And that's it for this week. We will see you soon on the Jayda InStitches show. Until next time, stay safe, stay crafty, and have an awesome week. Bye everybody!